Art yourself alive. Art yourself alive. Art yourself alive. Art yourself alive. Art Yourself Alive podcast with your host Vicky Parker, sharing lived experience stories of the power of creativity to support your mental health and well-being. Hello, so welcome to this podcast episode, and today I have an absolutely wonderful guest. I want to introduce you to a lovely friend called Rionach Aiken. Rionach, hello, how are you, my love?
Oh, I'm good. It's so lovely to be here with you, Vicky. Looking forward to our chat today.
Oh, me too. Thank you so much for coming on. So let me just tell our listeners a little bit about you. So this is Rionach, and she is a visibility mentor for soulful business owners and creatives. And she uses poetry and energy work to transmute visibility blocks. So you can actually share your own unique wisdom and create magnetic connection with your people. And that mission is about being seen and being known and being valued. And I absolutely love that. I totally resonate with that. It's such a delicious journey to go on, isn't it? Initially, when you realize that something creative can be that transformational for yourself.
Yes, absolutely. It's incredible. It's magical, actually.
It's absolutely magical. And we're going to get into the magic and the treasure of why you have trodden that path. Like so many of us have trodden that path and are bringing our work out into the world. So let's weave our way right back and let's move right in to where that magic begins for people. And so, as we know, on this podcast, we talk about people's childhood play so that we can give people an opportunity to reconnect with those precious memories of themselves, of that spark and that creative spirit that they had for themselves. And so with every one of my guests, I invite them, and I'm inviting you right now to share with us some of your magical play memories. Could you do that?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So I'll speak more about this, but I was so shy as a child. So I was I was sandwiched between two boys and an older sister who was a tomboy. So I was this kind of little sensitive child who was really scared and not up for running around and climbing trees and being boisterous like they were. So play for me was being out in nature, was speaking to the fairies and, making playhouses for the fairies, but also there was a beautiful way of playing for me with a friend of mine who lived across the fields, and we would walk across the fields to connect. And one of the things that we loved to do was go through ploughed fields and pick up little bits of broken crockery. And we had this rusty biscuit tin that we would put them into, and we'd see if we could piece some bits together. And for me, that way of digging in the soil to see what treasures we could find and discovering the hidden patterns underneath the soil as we rubbed them clean, and then seeing if we could put the pieces together. And that was just so magical for me. It was so gentle, it was so creative, and it really brought in, when I look back, I can see now that kind of digging down into the dark places, recovering the treasure, joining the dots, seeing the patterns is still something that's so alive for me to have found that in that simple way of playing with a friend one-on-one very quietly in nature is something that was really, really magical, and a memory that stayed with me.
You're talking about nature. Where in the world did you grow up?
I grew up in Ireland, so it close to the border with Northern Ireland, so in between Dublin and Belfast on the East Coast. And at that time, where this memory comes from, we were living in this gorgeous place near the Mourne Mountains, overlooking the sea. It was incredible, place of very ancient Irish legends from that region, and it was absolutely magical spot. Loved that place, that we lived. And we moved around quite a bit as a child, so we didn't stay there for as I got older, but it was a really beautiful place.
And I read somewhere on your website, I think it was, that you were the child that had your head in the book.
Yes. Yeah, and often it was books about the Irish myths and legends. I was very fortunate that even at school, the reading books that we got at school a lot of them were Irish myths and legends. And also at home, it's what my mum would read to us, and I could read, pretty much as soon as I went to school. I learned how to read really quickly. So like my older sister would get a new book from school and I would read it that evening and then give it back to her. But I loved these old magic and myths and storytelling of these ancient Irish heroes and the fairies and the magical world, the other world. It was something that I loved, growing up.
Were you able to communicate with that world in any way?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I would certainly connect with the fairies, and had lots of, I had a deep connection, with the land. My parents would say, "What do you want to do for your birthday?" And I was like, "I want to go up the mountains." So I just wanted to go to these magical places. That was, all that I wanted to do, and be in nature, and and really connect in with the fairies. So the fairies in Ireland are a bit like the elves in the Lord of the Rings. So you've got the little nature spirits, but you've also got these very ancient, majestic, magical beings who used to inhabit the whole land and then disappeared underground when the Celts came along. So they backed off, but they were very powerful people in Irish mythology. And so that connection is still there. I definitely have a very strong connection with fairies still, and I think it gives me that intuitive sensitivity where I could feel what's going on for people energetically. As a child, I thought there was something wrong with me because I was picking up on what other people were feeling and didn't know. So I thought, it was part of why I was so shy, is because I always felt awkward around other people. It took me decades to figure out. It's like, I'm actually feeling what everybody else is feeling. It's not mine. That was a big one. So I think that those magical abilities can take a while to come to terms with.
Yeah, I totally resonate with that as well. It's like your experience is so full, and you don't understand that other people aren't having that same kind of experience as you. So it's like you are actually never bored. You don't need to be out with everybody playing out on your bikes or being in a massive friendship group, because your inner world is so rich already. And as you're describing, not only your energetic understanding of what's happening or your energetic experience of what's happening around you as a child, but it's also being fed with the myths and legends of the tales of the land that you were brought up with. I mean, I remember a quote once about Tolstoy having like the population of the mind of Tolstoy. How could he ever be bored?
Yes.
Or something like that. I'm like, wow, that's your experience.
Totally. Yeah. It was never bored. Yeah. Could never be bored. Not possible.
And that's a really interesting insight to have, isn't it? That because you can witness children from the outside as being the shy, quiet one, in the corner. And as a teacher, I witnessed many, children like that. Shame for them sometimes. As a drama teacher, for me, I'm trying to pull them out into their visibility and embodying their presence and getting them to be, verbal about it. But actually, there's such a presence in the silence and the stillness and the observational role. And what I'm hearing you saying is that observational take on what's there just around you and the tuning in. Right. It does take decades for you to see how powerful that actually is.
Yeah, absolutely. And had you been, my drama teacher and trying to get me in front of a group, I would have resisted. I would have been, no, it would have been the worst thing ever. It's like, do not put me in front of people. Just that, huge self-consciousness and wanting the ground to open and swallow me. That was so intense. So it was like visibility, the last thing on my list. And I thought like being an actor would be like the worst job ever. Be like, no. That was how shy I was.
I know, I totally get it. I mean, I do understand that about the many hundreds, if not thousands, of children I taught drama to. But there is a way of allowing drama in the classroom to be about self-empowerment and not about being a big showy show off.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what I understood from my whole experience of acting and teaching drama, is that this life skill of being able to find that sense of your own presence.
Yeah.
You know, if Stanislavski could teach you anything, is you could sit on a stage and be silent and draw the focus to you, because if you knew what your intention was to be there and you sat and accepted that intention, you didn't never need to say anything.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's where I got to in the end. And it was poetry that helped me to flip that switch. Took a few decades.
Was poetry evident then in your childhood?
Not especially. Then it was more stories. You know, I loved language. I love books. I love stories, but not especially poetry. I think that came later, and it might have been to do with the English teachers I had, but that it didn't light up for me. And in a way, I think it was a good thing, because I know a lot of people that I work with have got, you know, their poetry trauma, or the school poetry is not for me stuff. You know, a lot of people have got that because of what they got at school, which is really sad, because I've never ever heard anyone say music is not for me. Never have I ever said music is not for me, because it's like, okay, there's going to be some kinds of music that you don't like and others that you do, and music is highly technical if you want to learn how to play it. But those of us, you know, who are not musicians, we don't feel, and we haven't been made to feel, that we need to understand music in a technical way in order to enjoy it. Whereas a lot of people were left with that, you know, from being taught poetry at school, is that if I don't understand this complex puzzle that I don't get, then it's not for me. So, which is a real pity, because I feel like there are poems, just like there are music for everyone, and you just have to let it wash over you. Like music, you don't have to understand, you know, the nuts and bolts of what goes on underneath.
I love the way that you've just said that as well, because people are often coming out of the education system with wounding around their visual art as well. You know, they're told that they're not an artist, or that, you know, they absolutely heartbreaking what goes on in the education system. And you're right. You know, I've had English teachers. I've had English teachers who, I mean, I loved language, I loved story, I loved writing, and I loved poetry anyway. And I was actually inspired hugely by Miss Davis, who was my English teacher. Her and Mrs. Zarbo, who was my art teacher. I have no idea whether they're even still alive, but I went to an all-girls school with a female headmistress, you know, and powerful women teachers in the arts. So I was incredibly lucky that I had that experience and didn't come out of the other end wounded. Yeah, you know, with that. But that's what I'm so appreciative of your work, that you do that you bring people to that space where they can just touch on the pain of what it meant for them to be, you know, to feel so powerless in the face of something like a poem, instead of transformed by something like a poem, or by art, or by movement, or by music, or anything like that, you know. So what was the first poem then that really helped you see that this could be transformational for you?
Well, I think the first poem, you know, I was at a stage in my career where I had been chasing success and all the external markers of success, and kind of gotten disconnected from my soul's path without knowing it. I've been, you know, chasing the career and the house, you know, the dream, you know, kitchen or interiors. And I was in touch with poetry at that time, but I was also like studying, you know, academic, like creative writing, which was slightly different, and chasing the grades. And there was this poem called For a New Beginning by John O'Donoghue that I came across, and I just felt, oh my God, somebody has written this poem just for me. It's like, how did you get inside my head? How did you know? And it just kind of came across me magically. I was on a poetry workshop, and there was all these poetry bookshops in the beautiful farmhouse coffee table And so I just picked up this book, and the page was already marked, and it's like, oh, this is the one. And it began in out of the way places of the heart, where your thoughts never think to wander. This beginning has been quietly forming, waiting till you are ready to emerge. For a long time, it has watched your desires, feeling the emptiness growing inside you, noticing how you willed yourself on, still unable to leave what you had outgrown. And the first part of the poem I could really relate to. I was like, oh my God, that's just me. That's just me. And then the second half of the poem is, though your destination is not yet clear, you can trust the promise of this opening. Unfurl yourself into the grace of beginning that is at one with your life's desire. Awaken your spirit to adventure. Hold nothing back. Learn to find ease in risk. Soon you will be home in a new rhythm, for your soul senses the world that awaits you. And that's, and I've just shared the first couple and the last couple of stanzas, but the second half of that poem, though your destination is not yet clear, that freaked me out, because it's like, yeah, I want to know my soul's purpose, but I want to know what the path is. Show me the destination and then I will take a step. And so this poem was really inviting me to see that was keeping me stuck, and that I really had to trust in the unknown and just follow the breadcrumb trails and come back to trusting that there is a soul's path and that I can find it, and that the energy opens up with it when I did. So I took that poem and I worked with it for months. I would read it every day. I'd be reciting it to myself on the tube and just really leaning into it over months and awakening the promise and the energy of the second half of that poem. And then that started to bring some magical next steps into my life that really took me, including the more poetry training and going deep into personal development. That really, it was a huge shift for me. So that was the first time that my life was saved or transformed by a poem that kind of grabbed me by the neck and said, this is where you're going, but in a way that was so gentle and really just felt so right for me.
I love that you shared that. I was actually a bit transported myself. It's such a beautiful process, isn't it, to identify with a poem or with somebody else's words at first, because we might just need that external mirror in the beginning before we can look inside and integrate that, and then maybe one day discover what the poetry of our own voice is. Which is absolutely beautiful. So thank you so much for sharing that.
And, so the poem, if I haven't shared it, is called For a New Beginning by John O'Donoghue. And
I also just love that sentence that you said. I often write down little gold nuggets of things that people say, and it was show me the destination and then I will take a step.
Yes.
Gosh, that's so relevant, isn't it, for this not knowing of what's in the future can become so crippling and so paralyzing that you never take a step. And this whole work, the work that you're doing, the work that I'm doing with the doodling and the blank page, the facing of the blank page in itself, the blank canvas in itself, is about that surrender to, I have no idea what's going to happen. I'm going to paint or draw intuitively. I'm not going to choose a still life, because then I will form an image in my mind of what it might look like in the end. That's not freedom.
Absolutely.
Let's just witness the blank page and have that as a symbolism for the next steps on our path. We may be able to see 6 steps in front of us, but we can't see 50 steps in front of us.
Absolutely. And also there's we're often taught in terms of career planning, or what's your 5-year plan, what are the next steps, and there's some things that's really useful for. If you want to build a house, go make plans. No, have your list, have it all, put together. It's really good to, have plans for stuff like that. If you want to find your soulmate or find your purpose, that's not going to cut it. That process will not work for these things, for the deeper unfoldings, of our creativity and our soul. We need completely different processes and ways of being held and holding ourselves for, the soul, the emergence of, the soul voice, the heart voice.
Yeah, that's really clear. And I really hope the listeners can resonate with that sense of preciousness and depth and allowing and permission and surrender to realize who you really are and what your voice really is.
Yeah.
And that takes me back then. You've already touched on the reason why, you were a child who played alone, or a child who was more into the mystical, magical legends of your country. But this focus of shyness, let's talk about shyness, because clearly in just hearing you now, in the way that you present yourself, not only in your speaking voice, but in your performative poetry voice, there's such a presence, there's a depth, there's a stillness, there's a peace in it. When you share that, that's why I was transformed and drifted off, because that's the power of it. You go into your other realmness, don't you, when you hear that. But could you just tell me what is shyness for you? Because if this is the challenge that we're looking at in this episode, how does that manifest? What does that look like, feel like, sense like for you?
Beautiful question. Well, for me, it's often felt like having no skin, so that sense of rawness, of just feeling so raw and so exposed, and almost like that, feeling the judgments, the projections of others. And I grew up in a, big Catholic, busy family, lots going on, lots of, interactions between the siblings, and just feeling that, like the slings and arrows of the, the projections, the judgments, the, petty little conflicts, and just feeling that it was just too intense. So there's that sense of feeling highly exposed and so self-conscious that it just feels excruciating. And also just feeling like I've got no protection, nowhere to hide. It's overwhelming. So, I would often be in tears as a child. I remember, my siblings teasing me and calling me a crybaby because that would happen so often. So it's just like, there's no protection. Where is my protection? So my protection was to go inside. It was the only way I knew of how to protect myself. Because otherwise I would just freeze, literally just freeze and cry and just want the ground to swallow me up. So it's I think that's what I would call it. There's, and I have gifts of gentleness that I just had to hide away, and didn't know how to, and didn't want to respond in the harsh way that other people responded. Like for years as a child, that my question was, why are people so mean to each other? Because I just felt that meanness so intensely. And kids are cruel to each other, I see that in my nieces as well, and they're lovely kids, and yet there's always a bit of power play and ego going on as well. So so that's how it felt to me. So having no skin, feeling exposed, feeling totally overwhelmed, and like there was just zero protection around me that others seemed to have.
So when did that actually begin to change for you then? How far into adulthood did that begin to change?
Well, I was in my, even in my career, in my 20s and 30s, I would choose positions that did not involve me standing in front of people. So for a long time, I worked in education, from my early 30s, up to, I think almost my early 40s, I worked in adult education, but I was like, don't put me in front of a class. I don't want to be a teacher, so I will be the manager who supported all the teachers. And when I did have to get a teaching qualification, I taught computers, because then they weren't looking at me. They were looking at the computer. So, and I was just so, really shy. And then I had a hit, I think when I was about 38, I had a hit to do creative writing, and I was really scared. I'd always been, loved reading books, but I'd been more of a visual artist because I had a good art teacher at school. But then I thought, oh, there's something in me that wants to write creatively. I could write reports. I knew I was a good writer and professionally, but I was terrified that, I don't know if I've got an imagination or I can write. So I signed up for a creative writing distance learning course, because that meant I did not have to sit in a group and share my stuff, because I was like, oh gosh, that feels too exposing. And in doing that, that's when I really discovered poetry through writing, through creative writing and through poetry. And then I discovered this deep, source of transformational poetry, and I just fell in love. And it was through that, the next few years of exploring, writing and also hearing, spoken word and transformational poetry, that I thought, that's what I want to do. I came across David White, who's a beautiful speaker of poems, both his own and other people's. And then I found, my own teacher, Kim Rosen, who teaches people how to embody and speak poems. But that was the first time I was like, oh, I want to do that. And for the first time ever, when I was nearly 40, I was like, I want to stand in front of a group and speak poetry, because there was something about poetry that just lit me up from the inside. And when I had that experience of being lit up from the inside, I didn't feel like I was receiving other people's projections. I felt that energetically I was transmitting a completely different energy that gave me that protection energetically. Rather than being a sponge, I could, really send out this beautiful energy. And that completely shifted it for me, that I was like, oh yeah, now I want to stand in front of a group and share a poem.
Oh, do you know, I'm getting a really interesting image. When you say it lit you up from the inside, it's almost like something then inhabited the space inside the skin. And I've got this image from an old science class, actually, of, when you create a vacuum and the can collapses.
Yes.
Because of the external pressure.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, look at that energetic difference between resonating outwards rather than being in a crippled receiving position.
Yeah.
That's just become so clear for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And of course, when we work on our self-worth and we work on our esteem and our reason for being here, and, we can fill up our own heart space and our own energetic space like that, it does have that effect.
Yeah.
It really does have that effect.
Yeah.
That's such a beautiful description. And I'm hoping that people who are listening can find that sense of what it is from their inside that can fill up the space of them.
Yeah.
So that they can take their rightful space walking on the planet.
Yeah. And that's my approach, to what I teach in visibility, because we, and particularly, women, those who are socialized as women, we tend to be horizon watching. Our energy tends to be out there on the horizon, on what's around us in the field, and kind of being hyper vigilant. And is it safe? So all of our energy and tension is out there, like on the audience, on the other people. What do people need? How can I meet their needs so I can feel comfortable? We've been trained in that for hundreds and thousands of years. And that can create inherent in that is a lack of confidence, because we don't have enough energy in our own core. We don't have, and it's something that's in the collective, it's how we're brought up, but we're not taught, and I think men are encouraged to do this in their socialization much more, to have much more of their energy inside themselves and to act from their own, desires. So it's, I talk about visibility is all about connection to yourself, first and foremost, connection then to source, to whatever it is that lights you up, and from there, connection to others. Because we often start with the others and then wonder why it's so hard. But when we're deeply connected to ourselves, and that's a process, and connected with whatever it is that really lights us up and has its sparkle, then connecting to others from that place. And then you're not just trying to fit into other people's world. You're actually inviting people into your energy field, which is full. Your tank is full. You're inviting people to partake of that. And you're creating a whole different dynamic in which to be visible than, what we're often taught.
I love that you've outlined that, because this is not just a reversal of like some simple thinking that's happened. This is a reversal of deep programming.
Yeah.
Of not allowing women, not just saying to women, oh, that's not who you are as a woman, but the demonizing, the witch wound of the collective and of the divine feminine, to actually punish and diminish and sideline that permission and that surrender for women to allow themselves to connect with their own core of who they are.
Yeah.
Such fear around women connecting to who they are.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's been, economically and on lots of other levels, women giving their energy to others has fueled a lot of, success for others.
Yeah.
So whoever those others are. So having us in that position, it's like, well, why would you want to, if they stop doing that, who's going to do it?
I just got a quote that just came to mind, that behind every great man is an even greater woman. I'm like, yeah, but why is she behind him? Mm-hmm. She doesn't need to be behind him.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, I absolutely love that. So how does that feel then in an energetic sense, that shift? How would you know that that's happened for you?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I think it's a gradual process in terms of, shifting in life, so it is about really embodying, bringing your energy into your body, like the core essence of who you are. And that's, for me, that's taken decades as well, just really embodying who I am. And it's ongoing process, coming in to your body and having, what is it like when my attention is outside of myself on other people, and how does it feel when it's inside, and playing with that, that's something that I teach people, just so you notice where your attention is. And so sometimes that's as simple as, instead of looking left, I'm going to look right. That's a habit of, I'm going to check in and feel what's inside me, rather than what do other people want. Because as we've been trained to be pleasers. We've been trained to feel that I'm not enough. I have to give more to others. These are really deep, really old collective beliefs. So that it's shifting that. And then there's also, I had a really powerful experience when I stepped into CEO role, of recognizing that I wanted to be in a leadership role. But when I would go for an interview, I would get all flustered and tongue-tied, because part of me just did not believe that I could take up space. Like, and this is like this energetically. So wherever you're playing with this, that this energetically taking up space, I just felt like that's just not me. I felt that, leaders or people who put their energy out into the world were these kind of large, loud, charismatic figures. And I'm just not like that. I'm shy, I'm cerebral, and, quiet spoken. So I just didn't identify and didn't think that was possible for me. And again, there was, I was already working with poetry. I asked my intuition, what poem do I need to work with? And I got an answer straight away. And I was like, no, not that one. I love that poem, but no, that's just not me. And this went on, and I kept asking my intuition, and it kept telling me, this is the poem you need to work with. And I was like, no, not that one. And eventually I gave in and I surrendered. And it was a Phenomenal Woman by Maya Angelou. And I was like, oh, but I'm not tall, I'm not black, I'm not this large, charismatic icon that she was. It just didn't feel like me. But when I worked with it, the pretty women asked me where my secret lies. I'm not cute or built to suit a fashion model size. When I start to tell them, they think I'm telling lies. I say it's in the reach of my arms, the span of my hips, the stride of my step, the curl of my lips. I'm a woman, phenomenal woman. That's me. And so the poem is literally physically inviting you to take up space, to reach out your arms, to, sway your hips, to, really embody yourself. I was so uncomfortable with that. It really stretched my identity. on, huge levels. But it was the last part of the poem that really hit home for me. So now you understand just why my head's not bowed. I don't have to shout or jump about or even talk real loud. When you see me passing, it ought to make you proud. And so that part of me is like, I don't have to keep my head bowed. And I think particularly, as a being brought up as an Irish woman, there's a lot of kind of head down, shoulders up, and kind of crouching forward, looking around, what does everybody need? Irish women in the kitchen are like on top of it, they'll get everything done. They'll go into the kitchen and sort it all out, all the food, all the other, it's built in there, but it's a lot of focus on looking after others. And I literally had this like physical crouch, is in my posture. And so this poem is, I don't have to keep my head bowed, and I don't have to talk real loud. So it also kind of gave me this permission as I worked deeper and deeper and deeper into these lines and found my own meaning in them, embodied them. It's like, yeah, I can take up space and I don't have to be loud. I don't have to be the big, loud, charismatic leader. I can actually be a quiet leader and do it in my own way. So, really, I had a lot of support with embodying this poem as well. And, I was in a group and there was all these other women that stood behind me as I was working with it, really supporting me to embody it. So I felt like I had this new collective at my back, not just the old ancestral ways of being, but this new collective that are saying, yes, you can do it. So embodied this poem. And a few weeks after I did this really deep work on with Phenomenal Woman, I had another interview for a CEO role. And I went into that interview, I was speaking the poem to myself in the car before I went in. And I was like, I can take up space because I'd stretched so much. I can, stretch my arms out wide, take up space. And then I was able to go in and really do my best in the interview and not be flustered and tongue-tied, be comfortable and saying, yes, I can energetically. I can see myself in that role. And I got the job, and I was the CEO of a Citizens Advice Bureau. Those of you in the UK would know that, for 5 years, and completely transformed the organization, and was able to show up as a quiet, introverted, shy leader in my own way, and big transformation. But it was the poem that shifted me, and it shifted me so much that even a few months after I'd gotten the job, I had to go to a chiropractor to shift some tension in my neck because my energy had shifted so much. My posture had to shift. And so after that, my head wasn't bowed anymore because it released the last vestiges of that posture, and it completely shifted me, on all levels, mentally, physically, emotionally, energetically.
I just got an image as well. Can you imagine your energetic presence is so big that your body's not big enough to contain you anymore?
Yes.
Oh, what a lovely image.
Yeah, exactly. The body has to shift to align with what I've shifted. Yeah.
And it really will ask things to come up, move through, and let go on all levels.
Yeah.
Physical, emotional, energetic. Oh, that's so lovely.
Yeah.
So that's what you do, isn't it? So we're moving on now into sharing how you bring the arty wisdom of your practices into the communities that you work with. So please tell us what it is that you do for people who are in soulful kind of businesses.
Yeah, well, one thing I offer is a magnetic presence, which is currently an 8-week program. And I am thinking of doing it as a 3-day retreat as well, but it's an 8-week program where I help people to choose and embody a poem over those 8 weeks. It's online. And with that, it begins with, what is your intention? And then I would give people a poetry prescription, because I have a huge library of poems, both poetry books and about 1,000 transformational poems on my computer, and I know them all, so I can kind of prescribe when people say, this is what I want to shift. You know, I can help give them a selection of poems that they can tune into and find, or they sometimes also turn up in other magical ways as well, which is beautiful. So the process of choosing the poem that they want to embody is part of that. And then, you know, creating a really safe space where people start to work with that poem and let it stretch them, speaking it aloud, letting their body move, seeing what it brings up. And it just, you know, both brings up the old that needs to shift, and also embodies the new energy that's there, both at the same time. And it gives them also that experience of being witnessed, being seen, you know, both in their vulnerability and in their brilliance, you know, and in their magnificence, because both are really vulnerable. You know, being seen, you know, vulnerably, you know, and the ugly crying or whatever it is, you know, the kind of, you know, the fear is really scary. But also it's like, oh, is it safe to really take up space? Because people judge you for that as well. So creating a space where it's, you know, both really safe to be as great, as brilliant, as huge as we want to be. So all of that is welcome in the space, and the groups that the people that I attract can really hold space for that. So people, you know, embody, and they find their own way with their chosen poem and really make it their own. So at the end of that process, it's almost as if I could have written that myself, because it's completely my poem now. And, you know, you might hear two people who've worked with the same poem and they sound like different pieces. You know, they're completely different because they've made it their own. It's infused with their own meaning. They get to stand up at the end of the program and, you know, perform that for the group, and again be witnessed and celebrated as they emerge. And they get to have that experience of fully inhabiting their own energy and you know, transmitting their energy out into the world, which shifts that whole dynamic of, you know, looking outside of ourselves for safety. It's like, this is how you generate your own safety. Because you're really transmitting that. So that's what I do. Also in my coaching programs, you know, I begin my coaching programs with a similar process in a one-on-one way. And I also do, another thing I do is healing the witch wound, you know, because that's just something that comes up so often with my clients. And, you know, I've done a lot of deep energy work over 25 years. So where I've cleared things inside myself energetically, that tends to come up in my clients. So it happens a lot that, you know, people are, you know, the one client who was saying, you know, she was scared of doing Facebook Lives, and we went, you know, within saying, what are you feeling? What's underneath that? She said, oh, I have a memory of a teacher criticizing me for getting the answer right. And I can just feel, it's like, yeah. And what's underneath that? It's like, oh, I see myself, I was a community healer and my community betrayed me and I was burned at the stake. And I was like, yeah, that's it. Let's work on that level. Yeah. You know, we cleared that, we shifted that through the energy work. And then the next time I saw her, I was like, hey, you getting on with the Facebook Live? She said, oh, fine. I think it was a bit tame. Actually, I'm going to come out and do, you know, even deeper cosmic meditation to my profile. To everybody that knows me next time. And no problem after that. She was doing them weekly. She was doing really deep cosmic stuff, and she wasn't no longer scared of either her religious family or her, you know, corporate former colleagues seeing them. It was just gone. So that's the power, you know, of doing the energy work as well. So that's the kind of stuff that I do. So it's both clearing the deep visibility blocks, whether they're from this life, from being bullied, from being shy, from, you know, old, you know, it might be, you know, family relationships, and clearing that out, and also the embodying the new energies, so that you can create what's aligned for you.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I can testify to that as well, because I've done a number of your poetry breakthrough challenges when you run them in your Facebook group. And you can know all that there is to know in terms of business theory. You've got your business plan there, you've got your social media strategy, you've got all of those things that are really important, left brain structural, you know, processes that you need to run a business. but it's not until you drop in to that intuitive side of yourself and the beauty of it. And you find that, look, I think you were saying it before, the soul essence that you're aligned with. That's when I look at my business as a holistic being and I go, this is her heart, this is her soul, this is the message that she wants to bring through. Yeah. This is what it's really about. Everything else is a practical tool. Yeah. But without that essence, yeah, she's nothing. She doesn't know where she is. She's floating around in the ether. And yes, we need to bring her through tangibly in a grounded way. But if you don't have something to bring through into the tangible, what are you bringing? Yeah. You know, and I'm just really inspired to share a poem with you, actually, because you're offering that opportunity for other people to take on a poem that already exists in the world and to help them identify with those aspects of their hidden self, you know, to bring them out. My perspective is that because I work in a multi-arts way, and I'm so grateful for everybody who puts out their energetic creative wisdom, you know, into the ether. And that, like I said before, that importance of being able to look at something, whether it's poetry or art or dance or music, and to see yourself in it and to see it represented, so that you then have permission to internalize that and then and make it your own. And actually, I've got this poem, it's on my wall now, it's called Others. And I'd really like to share it with you.
Yes. Oh, I love that. Yes.
Yeah. And so it goes like this. I need the words, wise and wonderful, of others, for my inner voice to embrace in its lost space, to hang on to be less afraid that my truth is alone and unheard. I need the words raw and real of others, for my inner voice to grasp onto as evidence that my truth is not false. I need the art, wild and loud, of others to reveal the validity of my inner landscape, to move me beyond the terror of a blackmailed mind and silenced cells. I need the expression, brave and strong, of others as permission to activate the catatonic energy within, so paralyzed by manipulation and afraid to move. I need the music, deep and resonant, of others as a guide to the song inside of a soul here, to break cycles, to rise into forgiveness of the patterns of others, so I may hold the space for others to compose the melody of their new truth.
Wow. Wow. Oh my God, Vicky. That's just such a mission poem.
Isn't it?
That's such a mission poem. Oh, I'm so glad that you got that in front of you, but that's just so true. It's so true. Like we need to be witnessed, you know, and it's a bit like these words of others are holding space for us to be ourselves, so we can hold space for others to be themselves. And there's so much depth to that poem that, you know, just, you know, breaking the cycles and all of the things that go into your work. Wow, that's it. That's the about me page of your website sorted.
It's interesting. It's not even on my website. It's a poem that lives inside me. It came through me.
Yes.
And it is, I wrote it because I was giving a talk, a public talk about creativity and resilience. And I remember I'm always inspired whenever I give a public talk, you know, to write something like that. And I brought the talk to a close in this crystallized version of the essence of what I was trying to say. And so I did that. It was called Inspiring Talks in Brighton. And that is on my website. The talk is on my website because it's on YouTube. But yeah, gosh, that really moved me again. Just to thank you for just holding that little space after I did it. Because it's like, oh yeah, still resonates. And then it shifts again and the heart expands and you're like, oh yes, that's why I do the work.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, if you were working to embody that, it would be, and you know, it is already quite embodied, but it's like you go through the layers and what does this mean to me now? What does this mean today? You really build all of those associations, you know, and at the end of that process, you know, some people will know it off by heart, or certainly can take their eyes off the page because it's coming, you know, from within. And then it becomes a gift. You know, those words can pop into your consciousness at any moment when they're needed. It's like, oh yeah, that's the line I need right now. That you live and you get to see and experience and understand yourself as the person who has written this poem and is the person who's living that poem.
Yeah. What a gift. What an absolute gift.
Yeah, well, that's arty wisdom in action.
It so is.
Multidimensionally.
Yeah. I mean, I love it when it comes through in words like that, but I'm also really love when it comes through in image as well, because I know for me, the visual art that I do is definitely a way of bypassing any need to try and articulate and left brain anything that is not, it doesn't have the capacity to be articulated in words. You know, I mean, words are obviously amazing, you know, but there are other layers of ourselves that need to find that mirror too.
I'm always finding and collecting beautiful images, and I know when I do my weekly lives, it's often, you know, finding the image, the artwork, and to go with that is really key as well, to find something, because it brings a whole other dimension to the work. So,
and that is what we're about. It's about the dimensions, the multi-dimensional aspects of yourself, because we show up as all that we are. And so the more we know consciously that we're all that we are, the more we bring to the table consciously, and the less it's being run by an unconscious program in terms of needing to be diminished or hidden or denied. So this bringing into the fullness of yourself, the more that you can do that, the less you can be swayed, and the less easily it is to collapse you from the external.
Absolutely. Yeah, beautifully. I love that. And the thing that I particularly love about poetry is that, you know, it's one art form where you can completely embody it. All you need is, you know, your if you remember it, you don't even need the words on the page, or, you know, you have a note that you carry in your pocket. But other than that, you can 100% embody a poem, and it actually rewires your brain. And there's been lots of studies of this where they've actually put people's brains into, you know, scanners, and seeing the difference that poetic language makes in terms of rewiring, because it drops deep into our memories, into our emotion centers. It lights up parts of the brain that don't get switched on otherwise. So it's really powerful for embodying and rewiring and having this new language. And because some of the old programs and patterns are in language, you know, being able to rewire that through this deep, soulful, embodied language is really, really powerful as well.
Yeah, it's really important, isn't it? Yes, some of the programming is in language, and there needs to be that antidote. My goodness me. So what would you say then to people, to listeners who are painfully shy or appearing to be shy because actually they feel within themselves that they are, you know, not able to protect their energy from the external with the chaos that we live in the world? I mean, it's so easy to just walk out. I forget to put my energetic bubble on sometimes when I walk out into Brighton, and I realize I should have stayed at home. Because it really is like that. No matter how much work you do, it's a daily practice to center into your self-worth and, you know, come from your core and be able to be present for yourself. But not everybody can do that, and it's a long journey to be able to do that. And but we need starting points, don't we?
Yes.
We need starting points. Everybody needs
Yeah.
a simple inroad so that they can go, actually, that's just manageable for me, exactly where I am at this point in myself. So what would you say? Where would you point people to begin in terms of using poetry?
Yes. Well, in terms of using poetry, I can share. I've got a lovely, simple guide that I'll share with you called
Nice.
"Using Poetry for Wholehearted Living," and it gives a little introduction, and it gives some tips for working with the poem if you find it. And there's also a list of 50 poems for wholehearted living in there, and also some recommendations for beautiful poetry collections, with a variety of poems. So that's a great way to get started with the poem. And I think if you find the poem that speaks to you, just bring it into your life. So print it out, put it on your phone, have it where you can see it, and just read it, walk with it, move your body. It's great when you're commuting or driving, or even doing something like hanging out the laundry. It's something that you can bring in to those empty moments. I've got a process in there that called no extra time. It doesn't require any extra time, because I spent a lot of time doing deep work with poetry when I was a CEO, when I was commuting 3 hours a day, and time was not available to me, but I didn't need extra time for working with the poem. So they're all in that poetry guide. In terms of keeping your energy clear, very simple one that I use is just intention. So just to speak quietly, or just say in your mind, I release all energies that no longer serve me. I release all energies that no longer serve me. And that can be like a little mantra. It's a very simple one. I do, more advanced energy clearing, with myself and with people, but that's a really simple one. And another thing I love is just to pretend I'm a tree. So to sit down and just, I'm a tree, I've got roots going down into the earth, I've got branches that are out all around me, and I am inhabiting my own energy field, so that there isn't so much space for other people's energies to come in. So be a tree, release all energies that no longer serve you. And there's lots of tips in the guide for different ways of working with poetry. But there's a lovely poem that I would love to share. It's a David White poem, which really, it's just encouragement for, and it's a bit of a mission poem for me, one of them, for the creative life. So it's by David White. It's called What to Remember When Waking. In that first hardly noticed moment in which you wake, coming back to this life from the other, more secret, movable, and frighteningly honest world where everything began, there is a small opening into the day, which closes the minute you begin your plans. What you can plan is too small for you to live. What you can live wholeheartedly will make plans enough for the vitality hidden in your sleep. To be human is to become visible while carrying what is hidden as a gift to others. To remember the other world in this world is to live in your true inheritance. You are not a troubled guest on this earth. You are not an accident amidst other accidents. You were invited from another and greater night than the one from which you have just emerged. Now, looking through the slanting light of the morning window to the mountain presence of everything that can be, what urgency calls you to your one love? What shape waits in the seed of you to grow and spread its branches against a future sky? Is it waiting in the fertile sea, in the trees beyond the house, in the life you can imagine for yourself, in the open and lovely white page on the waiting desk.
Just beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What urgency calls you to your one love? What shape waits in the seed of you to grow and spread its branches against a future sky? Because that's, that's the becoming the great oak tree, from the acorn to the oak. And the more you spread your branches against this future sky, the more you take up space with your own energy, the safer it becomes, and you generate your own safety to become visible. But this line, when I was setting up my business, to be human is to become visible while carrying what is hidden as a gift to others. I was like, that's my mission statement for quiet, introverted, creative people. It's like, yes, this is what it's about.
Oh, absolutely. And we're totally aligned in that sense, because that's what my mission is about. Remembering the treasure within yourself, becoming so deeply aware of that treasure that you never betray yourself again. That's become my mission statement.
Oh, yes.
And quiet, committed presence cuts through the noise. That's another one that just birthed. When you wake up and you're half in a dream, and I'm like, oh, what's that sentence just floating around in my partial consciousness? And there it was. I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
Well, we've got these gifts for people, because I'm going to put a link not only to your website, which will give you all other links to Rionach's presence online where you can access her, but I'll also share the link that she's really kindly offered to the free download of those 50 poems, almost like a treasure starter pack for you to dive in and see where you're resonating with those words of others, so that you can begin to identify those unspoken parts of yourself. So that link will be below. And also below this is a link that I share as well, because I have a 25-minute guided visualization meditation, which is an inner journey into yourself to find the treasure and the gift that's offered from your higher self. And this is my offering for people to drop deeply into their heart and energetic space within themselves and remember their worth, and have the permission to expand into wholeness in full surrender, and full permission to be exactly who they are, and for that to be enough. To fully inhabit the incarnation that you chose to come to, which is what I believe. It's like, okay, well, I'm here now. What am I going to do with it? I may have had those experiences where I needed to take maybe 4 decades to observe what was going on, because that was for me as well. I was well into my 40s, before this proper visibility journey started for me. It's like, well, it might take that long, it might take longer, or it might not take as long for some people. But that shift from I'm observing, I know I'm sensitive, I know I don't want to be loud and brash and harsh and in an ego fight, or to be using conflict to get what I want. I don't want to live like that. And I'm sure there's many, many people listening that were like, that's me. I'm more quiet. I want to bring that quiet presence to whoever I'm connecting with.
And it's needed.
It's
needed.
It's an antidote to what we've been used to. It is
absolutely. And that sentence you said about how it cuts through the noise, committed presence cut through the noise. So true. Absolutely so true.
Oh, what a delicious conversation.
I know. And there is a gentle power. I get that from people all the time, because there's, I have I've got a powerful part of me. Like when I was a CEO, I was like don't mess with me. side to me.
Yeah.
But it's within gentleness. So there's the, you know, the gentle power is real thing.
Yeah,
Real
it is.
Thing. Yeah.
Thank God. It's a real thing.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. And it also gives you such permission to just go around your everyday life, just being your magic, just being it. You don't need to shout loud. You don't need to become famous. You don't need a huge social media presence to be able to affect the energy of people around you in a really beautiful way.
Thank you so much, Vicky.
Oh gosh. Well, I really hope people have enjoyed that. I know I certainly have. Gosh, thank you again for holding a little bit of space for me there to just bring through my own remembering of when I write. And I really hope people are inspired. If they want to know more about your work, if they are a soulful business, purposeful business leader, or a creative, or they want to hold transformational space for other people because they know they have gifts too that might be able to help people in some way, please go to see Rionach's work. And thank you so much for that conversation.
Yeah, you're welcome. Very aligned. Beautiful. Very, very soulful. Thank you.
Thank you so much.